Hello, sinners. I just wanted to drop in and tell you that My Horror Confession is now part of the Ghoulish Podcast Network. In addition to producing podcasts, Ghoulish is also a publisher. Ghoulish Books has published dozens of horror books that have gone on to receive award recognition and even film adaptation. Browse their spooky offerings over at Confessional and use discount code Confessional for 10% off your order. And remember, Ghoulish, live spooky.
Live spooky, die spooky.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miguel Myers. Welcome to a very special episode of My Horror Confessional. By all accounts, and by my account, it is the 100th episode where every week I'll have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. Well, we typically discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. Today, we have a returning guest. Les Julien. Leslie is an independent comic writer whose work has been included in the Big Hype Volumes 1 and 2 anthologies, written short comics such as Ghost Gauntlet, Little Dragon Rider, Kurdish Delight. He's written Savage Wizard and Headcases #1 with issues 2s to follow in 2024. He's currently working on a one-shot graphic novella. Les, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Miguel. Happy to be here.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy. So last time you were on, we were talking about The Thing, right? John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah.
And I don't remember where it came up, but towards the end, I believe it was, you were like, you hadn't seen They Live. I was like, oh shit, I want to talk about They Live. And it just worked out where when you were available, when I was available, would be the 100th episode. And what a better way to celebrate than to talk about another John Carpenter movie, They Live, another John Carpenter movie starring Keith David.
Yeah, man.
Right?
He gets the best out of Keith. This is a fun one, man.
Yeah. So before we get into it, what have you been up to?
Well, just the other day I was hanging out with you.
That's right. We were at so a friend of the show, Zach Chapman, has started doing these Indie Inc. Shows in radio at radio here in Austin, which is a coffee and beer bar. And like at least they're going to try to do it once a quarter, but it's been January and February so far, where just indie comic creators come together and sell comics. And it's awesome. I had a great time. How about you?
Yeah, it was a blast hanging out with you and Zach and meet some cool other folks. It was a good time. The weather is beautiful, and just talking comics and messing around all day was a good Sunday.
Yeah. I have a lot of fun. I was able to debut my comic Aztec Death Whistle for the first time. Like I had literally had my friend of the show, Andrew Hilbert, pick him up the night before because I was in San Antonio promoting Ghoulish Book Fest, which is coming up March 14th, 15th, and 16th or whatever that weekend. So if you guys are interested, look up Ghoulish Book Festival. The store, it's in downtown San Antonio, and it's awesome. It's an amazing time. But so I got to debut that, and that was a lot of fun seeing the people's reactions to it and for getting to hold it for the first time. So this was, I invite you on my show, and I'm talking about myself. Sorry,
that's all good. No, it's funny you talking about it. I got to see or sneak peek of the script before, and so seeing the script, and then I mean, obviously for you being the writer is like one of the best feelings. But like, seeing the script to art process is incredible. Like this is a really polished book that you have, and I freaking love Aztec Death Whistle. It's really fun.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I have to thank you because this is my first time writing a comic on my own. The first comic that I wrote with Zach. We wrote Haunted Rental, and that was a ton of fun. But this is the first time I was doing. So I reached out to you, and I was reaching out to Zach. Zach was my editor, and just reach out to other people who have been making comics for so long for advice. So thank you for that. And on Sunday, you told me that you've been making comics for a long ass fucking time, right?
Long ass time. I'm an old
Was
dude,
it
man.
2005, 2006? Is that right?
2005 was like basically like the end of 2004 was like December 2004. Like I wrote my first comic basically since like, being like a kid or whatever. But yeah, it's like that's really when I started writing comics. So you could say I've been doing comics for close to 10 years. It's freaking wild to say that out loud.
Yeah, that is wow. That's awesome. So what have you been working on, like as far as your as comics is concerned?
So yeah, I got the aforementioned Savage Wizard #2 should be coming out the end of March. Don't have a date yet, but definitely in the March. Kickstarter is coming out for it. I'm super excited. The artist who's taking over art duties, Nero Crane, is incredible. Like he's been working like a maniac to make this look pretty as hell, and I'm super excited to get in people's hands. I got not Savage Wizard 2 mentioned. Head Cases #2 uh, is going to be coming out this summer. So that's another sequel I have coming out. I'm super excited about. Me and AJ and Paolo have been doing some crazy, interesting things for that book. So I'm super excited to come out with the follow up to that, and then the graphic novella that's slowly cooking. That's like in the slow cooker. Probably more realistically 2025, but yeah, I'm super excited for that one as well. So it feels like I have a lot and a little going on all at once right now.
Yeah. And so for people like you should definitely listen to the Thing episode because that was so much fun. But for people who haven't, or just as a reminder, could you remind them what, for example, what Savage Wizard is about?
So Savage Wizard is a story about Renar, who's like a Conan Barbarian type warrior. He pretty much loses his hand in a skirmish with his best friend and is forced to learn magic in order to stop his friend from taking over the world. So yeah, it's basically like what if Conan Barbarian was forced to learn magic in order to save the world. It's a pretty fun high concept. A lot of people seem to dig immediately.
Yeah, I love that. I love the concept of it. The artwork was amazing, like you said. I know you have a great eye for art, so I know you had a new artist coming in for #2. So I'm really looking forward to that one as well. And you said there's going to be a Kickstarter for that one in March, you said?
Yep, in the March. So look
Into
for
March.
that. Probably
Okay.
like last week in March, most likely.
Okay. And how about head cases? What's
Head
that about?
cases, yeah. So Head Cases is about two kids, Gila and Ramon. They're just two kids in New York decide like, hey, let's spice up our lives a little bit. Let's steal a bag from just a random commuter on the subway. And unfortunately for them, inside the bag they steal, there's a severed head and a hitman trying to get it back from them. So there's lots of consequences and crazy things and ensue from them jacking that bag. But yeah, it's pretty much about them and their journey trying to get away from this crazy hitman Leo.
Hell yeah. Listen, first of all, I just want you to be my co-host all the time. So this is why
Hell
I'm
yeah, that's
saying
the best, man.
when Head Cases 2 drops, there's a movie called Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. Have you ever seen it?
No, but that's on my
It,
queue. I'm
it's
watching now.
yeah, it's from the '70s and it's not a horror film, but I will
Yeah,
stretch, I will stretch it
yeah.
to make it work so that we could
Oh hell
discuss that
yeah,
movie in
let's
Head
do it.
Cases too. Right? Okay,
I'm
cool.
ready.
Every time you come on here,
I
I'm
know, to
gonna
find something else.
yeah,
Perfect,
yeah,
man.
cool.
Perfect.
All right, so if people want to follow you and support you, how can they do that?
I am online pretty much everywhere. Twitter, I'm not going to call it the other thing. Twitter, I'm at LESWRITE. I'm on Instagram, LES_WRITE. My website is leswrite.com. So LESWRITE.com. And pretty much you put in Les Wright in some combination, you'll find me on the internet somewhere.
And if are they able to like pre-follow you on Kickstarter? I'm not exactly sure how that works. Are they able to follow a creator on Kickstarter?
Um, you would think I would know, but I don't. But you
Yeah,
can
okay.
pre-follow the Savage Wizard campaign at least. So that is up and running right now. If you just I have it so it kind of refers to my website. So if you just go to savagewizard.com, that should take you to the pre-launch page for Savage Wizard #2.
Nice. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
thanks,
I will
man.
definitely be signing up. You guys should as well. Support indie artists, support indie writers. This is hard and expensive and time consuming, but all worth it because you get dope ass stories and art and all that sort of stuff. So looking forward to it, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Okay. So you are on to confess your sin of never having watched They Live from 1988. Is that correct?
Never seen it. I've seen some memes, but yeah, never seen the movie.
And how do you think this particular movie passed you by?
Um, I feel like it was just in I don't know, just like in a little blind spot, just like I had heard about it, just obviously way after the fact. But yeah, I just said for whatever reason, just never sought it out. So yeah, it
Yeah.
just kind of slipped through my radar pretty much.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, but last time we were talking, were was it that what was your journey into like horror movies? Did you start watching it later in life, like horror movies later in life, or were you always watching horror movies?
Yeah, for me, I feel like horror was always around, but like I would never necessarily call myself like a horror buff. Like I've seen an okay amount of horror movies, but I still do have like a pretty big blind spot in terms of classics or cult classics, whatever. So I've seen some stuff here and there, but I'm always working on trying to get caught up and yeah, get caught to speed in terms of the stuff I've missed. So yeah, I'm not surprised that something like They Live has kind of passed me by.
I feel like, I mean, so John Carpenter, obviously written and directed by John Carpenter.
Mhm.
I feel like John Carpenter is such a known name. Well, I'm biased, right? Because I've been
Yeah,
in, but I feel like even for you, do you feel like John Carpenter is a known
yeah, I feel like he's a
entity?
name that you, yeah, know
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like, a lot of his other movies are more well known than They Live, but
Mhm.
we're going to find out in a second here that he had a run in the 80s that was just ridiculous. And so so this movie took place in between 19 in between when he'd released Prince of Darkness in 1987 and then Memoirs of an Invisible Man in 1992. So this one came out in 1988. So there was a 5 year span there where he didn't make any movies. But
Mhm.
this was the culmination of probably in my in my opinion, probably the greatest run of any horror director in the 80s. So I just wanted to run this down real quick. So he started off the 80s, 1980, The Fog. Great movie. Escape from New York, 1981. The Thing, 1982. Christine, 1983. Starman, 1984. Big Trouble Little China, 1986. Prince of Darkness in 1987. And then They Live in 1988. So that's 8 movies in a decade, and all of them are bangers. Starman in and of itself, it's not a horror film, but it's a sci-fi rom-com, and then it's a great movie. It's got a super high rating, and none of these are like below like 6.5, but like a bunch of them are sevens and eights as far as like ratings are concerned and stuff like that. So these are like any director would kill to have one or two of these movies, and he has 8 of them, in a
Right.
decade. So. I just thought it was amazing that just the output. And then pretty quickly after that, it was kind of downhill.
Oh,
But so
yeah.
of those movies, so I know you've seen The Thing and now you've seen They Live. And have you seen any of the other ones like The Fog or Escape from New York,
I've
Christine,
seen Escape from New York. That's the only, and I've seen Big Trouble in Little China.
Big
So
Trouble in
those are
Little
the
China?
only two of
Okay.
his other movies I've seen. So maybe we can just have a Carpenter, just catch up on all the Carpenter flicks, honestly.
The Carpenter sessions.
Yeah,
Listen,
man,
don't mess
Carpenter
with me.
session.
I'm
I
down.
know you listen to Carpenter, so it'd be perfect, man. We win-win for both of us.
Yeah. So this movie, They Live, was based on 8 o'clock in the morning by Ray Nelson. He's a science fiction author and cartoonist. And the weirdest thing, he is the inventor of their propeller beanie. Do you know that
So random. Yeah, I
that
know
weird,
exactly
yeah,
what you're talking about.
yeah, he was in high school and he was like, they were at some convention in Michigan and they're messing around and he drew or he got some scraps of plastic and attached them to his hat. And then that became a huge thing that people started wearing in sci-fi conventions. And then it
Oh,
just blew from there. It's the weirdest
that
fucking
is so random. I
anecdote.
love it.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. And then so it was also associate produced by Sandy King, who was a producer in her own right. She met she met John Carpenter on the set of one of the films. I think it might have been Escape from New York. And they went out to marry in 1990, and they've been married ever since. But she was talking about all the movies that she's associated produced with him, and she's like, "I love Starman because I met and or maybe it was Starman where they met. I love Starman because I met and fell in love with my husband. I love Big Trouble in Little China because it was a chance to do a completely outrageous fantasy. I love Vampires because I think it's a really rocking movie. I love Ghost of Mars because we managed to make a 360-degree Martian landscape in the middle of the desert. And she says, I love They Live because politically it represented a certain statement from us. And I have to agree with that. This movie, it felt like watching the news. Like
Yeah.
it was so poignant. It's like everything that they were talking about is like still happening today and still
Yep.
really like able to be talked about today.
Yeah. I was just my wife, she's actually like, what do you think of the movie? I was like, yeah, it's like still like so relevant. Like, oh my God, it's still
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's still very, very relevant.
Yeah. So it's actually starring Roddy Piper or Roddy Piper.
Roddy Piper.
Yeah. He had a huge career. He did like over 40 films.
Did he
Um
really?
yeah,
How did I not know that?
one of them is Hell Comes to Frogtown, which I think came out pretty recently or before or after this one. And that's like a an Aussie, so an Australian like exploitation is what they call it.
Exploitation
Exploitation
class.
classic. Yeah.
Okay.
Or exploitation, whatever, one of those. But anyway, um, so how big so it sounds like you're familiar with Roddy Piper.
Yeah, I didn't watch a ton of wrestling, but I mean, yeah, I remember Roddy Piper back in the
Okay.
day.
So for those that don't know, Roddy Piper was a wrestler with the WWF. He was actually born Roderick George Toombs in Canada. He was a pro wrestler from 1973 to 1987 in a bunch of like the NWA, Pacific Northwest, and California. He was a longtime mainstay in WWF and was one of the biggest bad guys or heels in the WF during the early 80s before becoming a fan favorite in the late 80s. He became infamous for his mouth as much as his skills in the ring. He hosted a Piper's Pit, which saluted the bad guys of professional wrestling, the most famous of which involved him smashing Jimmy Superfly Snuka over the head with a coconut. He was wrestling's most popular villain because of his feud with Hulk Hogan that culminated at WrestleMania 1, the first WrestleMania.
Oh, well.
He went into semi-retirement after WrestleMania 3 when he beat and shaved the late Adrian Adonis. He continued to wrestle in the 90s, but spent much of his time doing color commentary for the WWF. He then went on to win the Intercontinental title for the first time and the only time in 1992, which what does win mean in wrestling? But
Uh-huh.
um, he later resurfaced in WCW during the late 90s to continue his feud with Hollywood Hulk Hogan until the demise of WCW in 2001. He did pass away of a heart attack on July 31st, 2015 in Hollywood, California. So RIP to the man.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. Also starring Keith David, the motherfucking legend.
The
Uh,
motherfucking Keith David.
the motherfucking Keith David. Put some respect on his name. Obviously, from The Thing we talked about earlier, he was in Nope. I wanted to give a little bit of respect to Keith David as well. He's a classically trained actor, winning 3 Emmys out of 6 nominations, as well as being nominated for a Tony Award. He starred in the recently concluded TV series Greenleaf. On the big screen, Keith starred in Academy Award winning films Crash and Platoon. He is widely recognized for appearing in Disney's The Princess and the Frog. He's also in Requiem for a Dream, Men at Work. There's Something About Mary. I completely forgot he was the stepdad.
Oh
And There's
yeah,
Something
that's
About
right.
Mary.
Uh-huh.
And then, as far as TV is concerned, he was on Creep Show, NCIS New Orleans, Blackish, MacGyver, Fresh Off the Boat, Community, ER. He was on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. On Broadway, he's been in Seven Guitars and Jelly's Last Jam, all by August Wilson. He got some Tony Awards for that. I'm pretty sure he's probably close to an EGOT, if he hasn't
Yeah.
doesn't have it already, right? Because
That's some
also
range. My God.
his voice, like his
Oh,
voice
his
is
voice is
so amazing.
amazing. Yeah.
Um, He's a voice actor. His rich and powerful voice has been featured in national commercials and award shows, documentaries, video games, and animation. His work in narration has earned him the three Emmys for Ken Burns' Jackie Robinson, The War, and Unforgivable Blackness, The Rise and Fall of Jack Johnson. Some of his other voice acting credits include countless fan favorites such as Adventure Time, BoJack Horseman, Rick and Morty, Spawn, Gargoyles. He even lent his voice to many video games. Um, he recently portrayed Spawn in the reboot of Mortal Kombat video game. He's also been in Halo 2, 3, and 5, Saints Row 1, 2, and 4, and Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. He was in all of them. I fucking love Mass Effect so much. So yeah, so that is Keith David, the motherfucking legend. He's amazing in everything he does. If Keith David is in the movie, it's you're gonna at least have that, right?
Yep, exactly.
I'd love to see him. And I feel bad here. Didn't really go as far into Meg Foster because she has other movies that I want to go in on her about. But Meg Foster, she was in Masters of the Universe and Lords of Salem, and she had I would say, a bit part in this movie. She wasn't that big of a character, I don't think, but she has a long career in Hollywood as well. So let's get started talking about this movie.
Yeah, let's do it.
So So the movie starts and we're at a like this graffiti covered train yard. I legit thought I forgot to hit record
Oh
again,
no.
and I my heart sank. But yeah.
Yikes. Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So the movie starts and we're at a graffiti covered train yard. They Live is spray painted on the wall. The camera pans to the left as the train goes to the right. Once it passes, we meet Nada, our hero. His name is never mentioned in the movie. We only know it's Nada because it's in the credits, and also that's the name of the character in the It was a short story. Excuse me. Nada also means nothing or zero in Spanish, so I don't know if that means if they were going for anything there. But as the credits continue, it's raining and he's walking along a busy road leading into a big city with a downtown filled with skyscrapers. As he gets closer, he looks up, seemingly admiring them or just gawking at them. And we do see here music by John Carpenter and Howarth. And I think this is like their seventh or eighth collaboration together, and
Mm.
it's their last one as well. But I was thinking, like, there's not, and I don't need to get into it because I'm probably sure I did it in other episodes that I've done of his with John Carpenter, but like, you just don't see a lot of directors that also make the music
No,
anymore. I can't think of
it's
anything.
crazy. Yeah.
I'm sure there are, but like just extremely talented. He's kind of an old grumpy curmudgeon now, and he says like problematic shit, but whatever. We're all human and fallible. So, um, he's now walking downtown. He's amongst like unhoused people and abandoned buildings. And at night, he's kind of warming himself up by a fire, or no, he walks by a fire and is warming himself up a little bit. So we're kind of to show that he's like is it a vagrant or a vagabond? Vagrant, right? Vagrant.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way to put it. He's just, yeah, he's new in town. He's, yeah, maybe a little bit down on his luck, and he's just kind of like sleeping outdoors. So yeah, just trying to figure out what his next move is.
Yeah. So he walks into the local unemployment office, which is jumping. It's like busy. He's
Yeah,
like
it's super busy.
club going up on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And he interviews with a lady who sounds like she's the agent from Beetlejuice. I don't know if you remember Beetlejuice, but like her voice is so hoarse and it reminded me of her. I even looked it up, but it wasn't
It
her.
wasn't her.
It wasn't her. But so she asks, where he comes from or what he's been doing. He's like, the last place he worked was in Denver, and he was there for 10 years, but things dried up. But she wasn't even really listening to him.
No, she was like super checked out. She was a big asshole about it. She's pretty much ready to be like next, like I feel bad for him in that scene. Like she really did not care about finding this guy a job.
Yeah, she says there's nothing available, and then he nods and kind of understandingly, which they kind of point to this later on about like him following the rules and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But even while we're at the unemployment office overhead, we hear like it's saying the WIC system or the food stamp system is down.
Mm-hmm. I
Do
heard
not
that.
apply for any food stamps. You're not going to
Yep.
get it or something like that. It's like it's
Mm-hmm.
so cold, like this bureaucracy. And this is kind of like the first inkling we get of like what the message is that they're trying to tell with the story,
Mhm.
which I am too dumb to understand all of it. I get some of it, but like I
Yeah,
think,
I'm sure there's layers.
yeah, there's a lot of layers. So later he's walking in a park and he hears a street preacher who's actually their character name is Street Preacher in the credits, and who has a small crowd of people listening to him, and he's kind of going off. He's like, they have taken the hearts and minds of our leaders. They have recruited the rich and the powerful, and they have blinded us to the truth. Nada stops to listen to him, um, and then just chewing at his toothpick. I don't know if you noticed that, but like
I
his
did.
rock toothpick. I used to be one of those dudes who always had a
Yeah,
toothpick
like
in
the
his mouth.
toothpick.
I used to have a toothpick and a knife. I was just
Oh
always just
man.
rocking a toothpick
Is
and a
that an
knife.
80s thing or is this just like a cool
Hey,
guy
hey,
thing?
hey.
No, I mean it could just be a general cool guy thing because I'm sure I've been doing since like what James Dean in the 50s and whatnot, but like yeah, I did notice the toothpick for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if just a
What
cool
was
guy
it called? A
thing.
cool guy thing.
Cool thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it. So, so the street preacher goes on to say, why do we worship greed? Because our owners have us, they control us. Wake up. They're all around you. And then, but then at that point, the cops pull up and Nada kicks rocks. So what I want to point out here is that at this point, we're kind of made to think that he's just a crazy dude, right? Just saying crazy things like he's out of it.
Yeah.
But we quickly find out that no, he has, he's right. And this speech comes back later, and we hear more of them as well. But then it makes you think of all the times that you're walking around a city or something like that, and you hear an unhoused person or something like a mentally ill person who's like just talking to themselves or talking out loud, and like, what if they're
What
experiencing
they're
something like this,
right.
Yeah. I think
Huh,
that's
what
what
if?
what he's definitely going for.
Hmm.
So then
Yeah,
he
I think that's a
walks,
good point. I'm sorry.
no problem. So then he walks by an electronics store that's displaying TVs, and there's a young man who's just like transfixed watching all the TVs. Another like message that he's
I use
given
that
this.
same word in my notes, transfixed by the TV.
Yeah. It's funny, like I was about to say he's kind of like giving us little bits of what the messaging of the movie is, and he doesn't like throw it in our face, but literally pretty soon they're going to be just throwing it in our
Yeah.
face. But right now, not so much,
They're
right?
in the setup though right now. It's like you're picking up the cues that they're giving us if you're paying attention. There's some good ones.
Yeah. So later at night, Nada is in an encampment for unhoused people, and he watches a TV through a window, which is really creepy. I think that's kind of creepy that
Yeah,
lady.
that was creepy. It's like, whoa, he's right
if
there, huh?
your if your house or your apartment is so close to an encampment like that, at the very least, just close your shades or something,
Like
right?
trying to share the TV with the folk, the
Yeah.
people out there too, I guess.
Well, it's not even just that they're unhoused. Like if your window was out to like the street
Yeah, to
at,
street
at
level.
night, you would close it, right? I mean, like
Yeah,
I have that as well with my front with my front window. I have to close it at night.
right.
So just a little weird. But it does allow him to watch her TV. And there's a woman that it kind of explains why she loves watching TV. And it like basically boils down to her like feeling like she'll never die. And she's able to live life through these stories and these movies and stuff like that, which is kind of like hitting hitting a lot of like things of why I love watching horror movies and TV and like media, playing video games. It's because you get to escape the the,
Hmm.
the realism of the terrible things of the real world. So while this is happening, there's helicopters passing overhead. Next day, he's at a construction site and asks the foreman if they need men. He says maybe it's a union job, and he asks very politely if he can speak to the steward. Um, Next, he gets the job immediately because next you should call him. This is a wrestling joke for people who don't get it. And I wrote this down. I was so happy when I wrote it down. Call him Bruno the Barber because he's a beefcake. That's the name of a wrestler. Bruno the
He
Barber
was
Beefcake.
looking pretty jacked.
Yo, man, I was like, God damn.
Okay,
Yeah.
Roddy.
He was thick. He was
Yeah.
thick. And not because he has his shirt off and he's doing
Hmm.
work. Um, it's here that we're introduced to Frank, who is Keith David. He's busting his ass with a sledgehammer. Well, I didn't mention that. So obviously Roddy Piper plays Nada, Keith David plays Frank, and Meg Foster plays Holly. Forgot to mention that. 100 episodes. This is still fucking up. So he Frank is busting his ass with a sledgehammer, and the whole site is filled with beefcakes, just dudes with their shirts off. And after his shift is done, the foreman yells at him and says he can't sleep on the site. And Nada asks, "That's fine, but when will I get paid?" And he says Thursday. So Frank hears the interaction and asks Nada if he needs a place to stay, and if so, he knows a place he could drop him off on the way there or whatever. So Nada kind of follows behind him. And then do you remember what Frank says here?
Uh, I I
If you know
don't
what that
quite. I
says.
remember the gist of it. No, I don't remember
Yeah.
exactly. I'm sure you got it.
Well, do you remember what happens? What you want to say?
He's pretty much just like, why are you following me? And oh,
Yeah,
Nada's just like, I the gist of it's kind of like, I'm not just gonna blindly follow. Like, I want to see where you're going. Something like that. Something to that effect.
exactly. Yeah. He says, I don't like anybody following me unless I know why. And then he says, Nada says, I don't join up with someone until I see where he's going. And that makes Frank smile. So they're kind of bonding a little bit there. But
Yeah.
um, so then later they arrive to the encampment and he meets Gilbert's. And they get something to eat. While eating, Frank admits to having a wife and two kids back in Detroit that he hasn't seen for 6 months or 2 months, something like that.
Yeah. So I think it was like 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, which makes what happens later really, really sad.
Hmm. Yep.
But he's basically confiding in Nada that he got laid off from a steel mill. This is exposition, but the way Frank does it and the way it's written, it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel necessary. They're just met and they're kind of learning about each other.
Right.
He says that the union gave the steel mill a break when they needed it, and then the steel mill turned around and gave themselves raises in return, which we've
Hmm.
seen that happening literally when President Obama saved the car industry in 2008 or whenever it collapsed.
Yep. Of
And then the car executives turned around and gave themselves huge bonuses and raises and stuff like that,
course.
and let a ton of people go. The union lost tons of jobs, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So like that happened 20 years later. So this came out 88. In 2008 it happened, and it's
Yep.
still happening to this
Still
day,
happening.
you
And
know?
like Frank says, I love this line. He said, he who has the gold makes the rules. You
Yeah.
remember that line?
Yeah. The golden rule, he who has the gold makes the rule. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
golden rule. It's like, man, yeah, facts. That is the real golden rule shit.
So Nada tells him that he should have more patience with life. And Frank like literally interrupts him and says, I'm all out of patience, baby. Like, okay, I can tell, I can tell.
Yeah, you can tell.
So then
Yet
he's like,
again, making him the hothead.
yeah, that's true. He was the hothead in the thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So then um I know when Carpenter was looking to cast this role, he wanted somebody to be able to stand up to Roddy Piper and be an equal, not be a sidekick.
Hmm.
And when he was thinking back, he's like, when I worked with Keith David on the thing, I felt like he had that even with um, the guy I can't think of the name now, the main character in the thing,
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell,
Yeah.
yeah, he had that kind of dynamic as well, where
Hmm.
he was like equal to, and so he
Right.
wanted that same thing, so that's why he got Keith David, and he actually wrote the part for Keith David.
Nice.
So Frank goes on to say that life is like a game. They put you at the starting line by yourself, only everyone's out for themselves and looking to do you in at the same time. He says, you do your best, but I'm going to do my best to blow you away. And while they're talking in the background, it's these skyscrapers. So we're literally against the background of capitalism here,
Hmm.
right? So Nada says, he's this like wide-eyed
Very
idealist,
wide-eyed. Oh
basically.
my God. Yep,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I wrote.
Yeah. And he says he believes in America. He follows the rules and he's kind of just waiting for his chance.
Still
And I'm
believes
like,
America and hard work paying off. I had to, like choke down, not necessarily choke down a laugh, but like, oh man, if only you knew Nada. Like maybe
yeah,
even back then, I think that was already deteriorating, but by now, it's like, oh my God.
yeah, yeah. So later at night, Nada's playing the harmonica, which was actually Roddy Piper playing the harmonica, which was
Oh,
cool.
nice.
And he's visiting with some of the camp citizens. Some of them are watching TV. Suddenly, the broadcast is interrupted by a bearded fellow who I never really get. I don't know if that person is named, or if you have it, I may have missed it. But the person who's always on the
Mhm.
broadcasts, I don't know who it
Yeah,
was.
no, I'm not sure. Yeah, I didn't catch her name either.
Okay, so he's this bearded fellow, and he's like, our impulses are being redirected. We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. And then one of the guys is like, what the hell? This is the second time tonight. And then again, the man says the movement was begun about 8 months ago by a small group of scientists who discovered by accident that there's signals being sent. Again, the signal here is lost. There's only static, which gives everyone watching a headache. And then comes back and it says the poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. Again, like
Yeah,
spot on here.
spot on.
And he says they have created a repressive society and we are their unwitting accomplices. Their intention to rule rests with the annihilation of consciousness. We have been pulled to a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves and others. We are focused only on our own gain. Please understand that they are safe as long as they are not discovered. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated. I just wanted to say that because I feel it's so important.
Yeah, I wrote
It's-
that whole thing down too. So I was like, yeah, you could just feel like, I don't know, like the importance of like what the bearded guy was saying there is very powerful. It's like, whoa, that's a lot. And I can totally relate to all of that.
did you what like so when you were hearing that, like what was kind of
Mhm.
going through your mind? You're like, oh man, this shit's never gonna change.
Yeah, I mean a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like this is supposed to be fiction, and yeah, that art imitates life.
You're like, I came here to have a good time, man. What the
Yeah,
fuck is this? Yeah.
basically. But I mean,
Yeah.
I loved it, and just like it sets the atmosphere like so well. I mean, there a lot of allusions to they, and I mean, like I said, obviously it it resembles life, but also you can just see the themes of the story like just put out right there in the bearded guy's I want to call it manifesto, but his transmission to us.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to point out is that because of course it's kind of like the rule 30, is it rule 38 where if there's something that exists, there's porn about it.
Mm,
If with this, like if there's something cool that exists, Nazis are going to try to take it. And so for a long time, or like around the time of like Trump 2016, a lot of neo-Nazi groups were trying to claim that this, when they say they live and all this backdrop, that it was about like the quote unquote Jewish control of the media or whatever.
mm.
And so Carpenter had to come out and say that's not what it was about at all. It was about Reaganism and consumerism and
Yeah,
yuppies in the 80s and sort of
I
shit.
feel like that's fairly clear, but of course, like you said, Nazis are gonna try and co up some shit and spin it to their advantage. But yeah, like
Yeah.
this is very. I mean, obviously, you could remake it now and make it still very relevant and poignant. But like, this feels like such a pointed attack at the '80s crass commercialism and Reaganism and all those things. Like, just like for sure, like it feels like a big targeted statement towards that.
Yeah. And like trickle down economics and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
All
So,
that bullshit. Yep.
so as the signal finally switched back to the regularly scheduled programming, one of the unhoused dudes stands up and says, blow it out your ass, which this is very important to remember later on, which was a complete surprise to me.
Okay.
So while this TV monologue was happening, the street preacher from earlier was kind of reciting it word for word.
Right. That sounds. Yep.
Yeah. And then he sees Then Nada sees street preacher arguing with Gilbert, and then they kind of walk away to the church across the street. In the morning, Nada leaves the camp on the way to work, and he bumps into Gilbert, and he asks about the church that he saw him and the preacher go into. Gilbert says that the church lets them use their kitchen because they're feeding a bunch of people. And he's like, till 4 in the morning? He's like, yeah, basically. But Nada looks on suspiciously. Then we hear another transmission. They are dismantling the middle class. More and more people are becoming poor. We are their cattle. We are bred for slavery. The signal must be shut off at the source. At this point, it stops, and then there's more headaches for the viewers, and then there's a standby message. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this message here. We're dismantling the middle class. More and more people are becoming poor. What did you think of that?
Again, like you just feel it, man. Like it just again, it just rings so true. Then it rings even more true now. Like they're yeah, just on the money for that. I really liked that line right there.
I mean, the middle class is disappearing. Like my wife and I, like we are not. It's harder and harder to make ends meet with
Hmm.
this same money because the prices have skyrocketed,
Right, with
and so
inflation.
with inflation and all that sort of stuff, so like the check just ain't checking that much anymore. It's
Right.
just
It
not
ain't
making it.
checking.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that like capitalism works now, they say pretty much was it that you could be born middle class and potentially fall out of the middle class just because the way that the economics of today works. And so like, man, yeah, it's really interesting. Yet another horror story that we're living in. You could talk about that, the horror of economics.
Yeah. I mean, it's just sad to see that so they were talking about the middle class eroding in
Hmm.
1988. I can
1988.
imagine what
Yeah.
the middle class is now in 2024 when, you know, all the corporations are price gouging us, and it's just, it's so much harder to like the price of groceries is almost doubled, and
Hmm.
it's ridiculous. And so it's like, Jesus Christ, like Carpenter was talking about this in 88. People have been
Yeah.
talking about it before that. It's like,
Hmm.
um, and the funny thing though is that now Carpenter's such a capitalist. He's just
Really?
like, give me money and I'll do it. That's like his response to a lot of questions when people ask him, would he do another Halloween? Would he do another horror movie? Would he do another this? Would he do another that? He's like, give me the money and I'll do it. Like
He's given
he's
up the fight.
I think so, man. I think what I think it was about though with him, it was just like they're trying to take my money. I think this
Hmm.
is a very personal message to him,
Hmm.
because he was talking about the genesis of this movie, and it was like he was just looking well, he really disliked Reagan and Reaganomics, and
Hmm.
then he was just looking at advertising and TV and how everything was set up on TV to sell you something, to take your money away,
Hmm.
which is true. Literally everything is to get your money. But at the same time, patreon.com/my professional, where you can support this show and all. Don't forget about Les's Kickstarter campaign, okay? That's the important stuff. That's the important stuff.
Yeah, give to people, not corporations.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So Gilbert looks suspicious, and he crosses the street to the church and following no, I'm sorry. Gilbert looks suspicious, and Nada follows him, crosses the street to the church. Nada eyes him and like this smile on his face. He sneaks towards the church, and we hear in the background singing. Then he sneaks through the back, and he notices a table full of chemicals and sunglasses. He then notices written on the wall, "They live, we sleep," which is, I love that line.
Yep.
And then, do you remember what happens here?
So from there, yeah, we see that the singing is fake. It's being recorded on a tape recorder. And so he's starting to eavesdrop on a discussion between Gilbert and the street preacher. I don't remember the exact specifics of the conversation, but he's listening in, but I don't think he can hear too clearly. And so he starts poking around, and he knocks on a wall, like he kind of finds a false wall and kind of opens it up. And luckily, no one hears somehow. And he sees there's a box inside, but I believe at this point he doesn't open it up yet. And so he
Right.
fixes that fake wall. And as he's fixing it, he's like, "Hey, no one caught me." And he's going to turn, and this is a great move. He turns around, and the preacher's right there, and it's like, I mean, I'm not sure how you feel about this movie in terms of like where it lies on the horror scale, but for me, it's maybe not so much of a quote unquote true horror movie, but I love this scene. He again, we talked about that toothpick earlier. He's been has his toothpick in his mouth the whole time, and all of a sudden the preacher like grabs him by the throat, and it's like, did he swallow the toothpick? I just love this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a
Well,
really tense moment with him and the preacher there,
yeah.
where the preacher gets up on him and he starts feeling his face and trying to, I guess, figure out what kind of person Nada is.
Yeah. So at this point, we realized that the street preacher is blind. I don't think it was apparent in the
No, I don't
first
think it
couple
was before
scenes that we
either.
saw. Yeah. And so the men in the church that are talking is Gilbert and a bunch of other people. They say that the transmission only lasted a couple of seconds. He says that the signal isn't working, the one that they're throwing out.
Mm,
And then one of the characters named Drifter says that we have to get to their shipment on the street, and we don't know what that means. But Gilbert says that it won't work. But Drifter says that they have no other choice. They can't keep robbing banks. And then Gilbert says we need to find new, strong people to work with us. So we kind of understand there's some sort of underground resistance happening here.
mhm.
One of the things that, knowing what we know now about those glasses, I wonder why Gilbert doesn't think just throwing a bunch of sunglasses down like in Midtown
Mhm.
wouldn't work. I guess they're going for mass
Yeah, I don't know if that's too scattershot.
transmission.
Like, will people just, I mean, would you necessarily just grab some random glasses that you found on the floor? Like, if you think it's going to get destroyed, or like if the aliens could come across them and confiscate them, like you want them to get into people that are either sympathetic to your cause or not the alien. So I guess maybe they think that's a little too random of an approach, perhaps.
I think there could be a two-pronged attack because, like,
Mhm.
like flyers, like when you go to a protest or whatever, you throw up flyers, or
Yeah.
even let's say a better example, any high school movie where there's going to be a party, right? Or even like was it Mean Girls where they throw those flyers of all the stuff that was in the burn book, right?
Mhm.
And the teachers are trying to grab them before all the students could see it, but a bunch of students still saw them. I
Yeah.
think the same way, you go to a stadium, you throw shit ton of glasses, and maybe 80% of them will be confiscated or not used, but 20% maybe. And
True.
then you have more to your cause. Um, so I just thought that, but also maybe they thought we don't want to give away what our weapon is, right?
That's
Maybe,
why I was also wondering. It's like maybe they still want to keep the glasses concealed in terms of like that we know, like they
yeah.
know, but we know too.
Yeah, because the
So
aliens don't know at that point that the
right.
glasses are yeah, okay.
So maybe
So
that's that.
so um so Nada leaves and so then he goes outside and there's more helicopters and Gilbert and accomplices go outside with their sunglasses and look up. So we know it has something to do with that. Then Frank hears gossip of a cult that's robbing banks
Mm,
and he notices Nada acting strangely. So he goes to talk to him, and Nada is watching Gilbert and company emptying the church. But he's got binoculars. I wonder. So he's got tools for construction, and he also has
mhm,
binoculars in that
mhm.
he's like got a backpack. Apparently, he's got everything in there. It's like
Well, he
it's.
borrowed the binoculars from that one kid who
Did he? Oh
I can't
man, I
remember
didn't
the name.
notice that.
Yeah. He's talking. I think when Frank was looking at Nada being suspicious, he's talking to that kid for a little bit, and then he borrows the binoculars off of him, and then he starts staring at the church obsessively.
Okay, so no plot holes in this movie. This movie's perfect. Five upside down crosses already for me. But no, but so then he tells Frank that he was in the church earlier. He saw boxes and a lab set up, and there was no singing. He explained about the recorder and all that.
Mhm.
And Frank is like, "Leave it alone. It's none of my business. It's
Yep.
none of your business." Um, but Frank plans to mind his own business and tells Nada to do the same. So I kind of love that. I kind of love where like Frank is like, "Fuck that.
How
It's
much?
not.
Yeah.
It ain't got
Yeah.
shit to do with
I was
me."
gonna ask, what do you think about not just snooping around and being so nosy? What'd you think, or what'd you make of that?
Yeah, I feel like
Do you think
he
it? Sorry, go ahead, Nathan.
no, I want to hear what you're gonna say.
Well, I was gonna say, do you think it has to do with either that idealism or like him kind of following the rules? Like, is he going to narc? Maybe like wasn't sure. Like he's, I don't know.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Initially, and then like he's convinced to do otherwise. But at first, I was like, is that why he's like snooping around? Like, I don't know.
Like he wants to be a hall monitor sort of thing. Like
Yeah,
he's
maybe.
yeah, I hadn't thought of that because it doesn't make sense where if he's a rule follower, then
Mhm.
you wouldn't go sneak into somebody like a church, like
Yeah,
a
so
place that's
it's
not
kind of
yours.
I don't know, kind of contradictory. I'm a little confused what to make of it there, but maybe he's just legit curious. I don't know. He
Yeah.
kills the cat though.
So, but he does. So Frank plans to mind his own business, tells Nada to do the same, and then Nada has a great line here about white lines. Did you write that one down?
Did I get that one? I didn't have that one. What did he
He
say?
says, so basically Frank is like, I'm gonna toe the white line, which
Oh, now I remember.
which
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and Nada says white lines are in the middle of the road and it's the worst place to drive. Fucking love it.
That's a
That's
great
where
line.
all the fence sitters,
Yeah,
all the
the centrist
Do you
and
condemn Hamas motherfuckers, all that
right.
shit? Like
Yeah.
that's what that is. That's speaking directly to them. Like, let's hear both sides
Hmm.
type dude, right?
Yeah.
Head ass.
Yep. Yep. You called it, man.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So Frank leaves angrily. Uh, at night, Nada continues looking at the church when suddenly another helicopter uh, arrives and everyone kind of scrambles inside. Gilbert starts helping the preacher cross the street as the cops arrive and swarm the church. It's a full SWAT response.
It's nuts. That response is crazy.
Yes, riot gear, bulldozers. Um,
Bulldozer. I've never seen a bulldozer as a freaking yeah, a
yeah.
police response. Like that's how you know things were very serious and they're
Well,
coming to destroy.
here in Austin, I've seen it a couple. I mean,
Oh,
not in
have you?
person,
Oh
but
wow. I didn't
not in
know it was
person,
a
but in
real
the
thing.
news when they
Hmm.
would demolish homeless encampments or unhoused encampments.
Hmm.
Because we have, I'm not sure if they have them in San Antonio, but in Austin, they'd have these encampments, typically under freeway overpasses, like under that,
Hmm.
but also like out in fields or on the sides of them where there's a lot of grass for them to, because live somewhere. They're human
Yeah,
beings.
of course.
And we legalized camping, and then and I think there was a vote again, and the city voted against it, making it illegal. So when that
Hmm.
happened, all the unhoused encampments were a lot of them were just bulldozed over. So it's wild. So you do see that again happening in 2024. You know,
Wow.
so um, they start demolishing the encampment while the people are there. The police fire gas and like they're beating people. And Nada is kind of looking around and he finds Frank, but
Hmm.
Frank looks at him dead in the eye and runs the opposite way. Not
They're
Frank is
going
not.
the other way.
Yeah, he's not with the shits, right?
Yep.
But like he has a wife and kids, he has to like
Hmm.
keep his nose clean as far as he's concerned, like he doesn't know everything is going to lead to.
Yeah. It's funny. I just had a really stupid thought when this scene starts. I just said to myself, what if the LAPD just really hated the bootleg sunglasses racket? Like they were just really anti-counterfeiting.
Yeah, what if they're like owned by Ray-Ban or something like that?
Yeah,
Ray-Ban has
exactly.
the cops in
Hmm.
their pockets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big sunglasses.
So Nada runs as well, but he runs right into this group of cops that are beating Preacher and Drifter viciously with
Hmm.
batons. But he walks away. He
Oh,
doesn't do anything. He does help another man. He
and
grabs him by the hand.
that's the binoculars kid.
That
Just so
is
you know.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I was wondering because they kind of gave him a little featured time on the camera
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So they run down the alley and they're cut off by police, but they make it into an apartment building. And the destruction outside, sorry, and the destruction continues outside. And then inside, they find others huddled for safety. one man asks him, "Did somebody start World War III?" And then the scene fades to white as Nada is looking out the window. So I think that was a pretty powerful scene. What were you thinking when you saw, for example, like the homeless, the unhoused encampment being demolished and everything that just happened?
Yeah, I just thought it was a like a ridiculous over escalation of whatever. Like I could see them going after the church, like, but then like when they started going at the homeless, sorry, yeah, the unhoused encampment, I was like, what? Why are they tearing it down? They're beating people. Like, do they know what they're doing? Like, I mean, obviously they do, but yeah, I just thought that was wild, like how how it escalated as crazily as it did. Because again, I thought their main focus was going to be the church. So when they went after just everyone in the nearby radius, I was like, damn, like this is bleak, this is bad. But maybe there's a bigger, there probably is a much bigger message there. Just like, you're
Yeah.
not safe if you're even remotely, related to the truth or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, in capitalism, your humanity is only go so far as how productive you are to society,
True.
how much money you're making, how much money you're spending, and how much they
Mm-hmm.
can you are just another resource in capitalism. So that's and once you are no longer of use, then you can be bulldozed out of existence. I think is
Yeah,
pretty much what's being said there.
it's true.
So the next morning, Nada and others look out at the destruction while the commercial plays on in the nearby TV, like this juxtaposition of this like happy, peppy TV commercial while, families look on at the destruction of their homes and stuff like that. So it was pretty sad to see. And it's something that we're seeing now, on social media. We're seeing all of that. So, um, he goes to the church and he checks inside. It's been destroyed inside. There was a fire. All the boxes that he saw last night are gone, except for the ones that were hidden behind the wall, which I thought was a pretty clever way. Like I don't know, I kind of like that.
Yeah, me too.
Even if they're s- swarmed by SWAT and police, there's a little bit of hope. They left something behind for somebody else to find, which he does,
Mm-hmm.
and ends up saving them. You know. So he grabs the box and he walks out. He walks down the alley. And then when I saw this alley, I start salivating in anticipation of the future.
Same.
I can't wait to get there. But when we get there, I want to talk to you about it. But I was like, oh shit, is it gonna happen now? No, no, it's not gonna happen now.
Yeah.
But he opens the box in anticipation. I wonder what he was thinking. Maybe drugs. Most likely, probably
I think
thought
he was thinking
drugs.
drugs. Yeah.
And
Because
but
he
he
had the
sees,
chemicals and stuff. Like, what else is it gonna be?
yeah,
But it's like sunglasses.
and he sees sunglasses, and he's kind of kerflummoxed here. Um, what do you think he would have done if it was drugs?
I think we need a timeout.
Sure.
Mhm.
So, so you thought that perhaps it was, and I think as well that he thought that there was drugs in the box. What would he have done with those drugs if it was actually drugs? Do you think he would have sold them or what?
No, I think, yeah, more likely than not, he would have left alone or like, oh, that's more maybe that was his explanation that like that's why the cops were going so crazy, like I think he was seeking some kind of explanation for what just happened.
Yeah, doesn't seem like a rule book follower to me right now.
Yeah, he seemed less like a real follower. Before it seemed like, oh, he's a real follower. I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
what he's doing, but yeah, not so much a rule follower.
So he's tearing up the box to see if anything was in there, but it's nothing. So he walks away with one pair of
Mm-hmm.
glasses that he puts on, and he promptly takes it off because they're kind of blurry. He puts them back on, and his world is from this point on turned upside down. Advertisements say obey, like in white, like with just like a white background with black lettering, just says like obey.
Mm-hmm.
And then he puts it, but with them off, it's just a regular normal ad. He checks his vision and looks again at another ad, and it says marry and reproduce.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, he snatches off the glasses. he walks up to a store and checks the signage, and it says no independent thought, consume.
Hmm.
He looks down the street at an ad, and it's just signage everywhere. Do you remember any of the signs here?
I don't remember any of the ones
Okay.
here, but yeah, they're very similar in nature. But I'm
Yeah.
sure there are some good ones hidden in there
Yeah.
that I missed.
Conform, consume, obey, which if people are familiar with Shepard Fairey, obey
Hmm.
is going to be
Yeah.
familiar to you. Work 8 hours, sleep 8 hours,
Oh,
play
nice. It was that
play
one.
8 hours, which yeah, that counts. That's your whole day there. Stay asleep, watch TV, submit, buy, and he is kind of stunned here.
Hmm.
One thing I wanted to ask you, how familiar were you with this movie? Now, I know you said you had seen some memes. So
So
what
I
what did you know
know
going in?
I know about the fight scene, and
Okay.
I I knew vaguely that like people were seeing things that like weren't there. Like I was not aware of like maybe like the subversiveness of it or anything like that. I just knew that the people saw things that but not everyone saw. Is basically what I knew about They Live pretty much. So I very little.
Okay. Okay. So when you started seeing these like these signs here, what were you thinking? Like what was like what were you thinking about that?
So once I started seeing the signs, I think it started becoming a little bit more clear to me. So I was like, oh, like this is the day, like what the transmission and all that stuff like, is also coalescing to me. Like, okay, like so uh clearly like there is yeah, capitalism or whoever the day is pushing a certain lifestyle, like this ultra capitalist conformist lifestyle that uh only certain people are aware that like this is a trap, so I just love the visuals of it, and just like him realizing like, oh shit, like it felt very much like a proto matrix moment, like he's seeing the truth, like he took the pill and is seeing like, oh
Oh yeah,
crap,
yeah.
I can't go back, like this. Well, maybe he's not his can't go back moment, but he's like there's more out there. Like I've been totally missing what else is out there.
Yeah. And so he's in front of this huge magazine
Mm-hmm.
or like newspaper stand, yeah, newspaper stand, which just doesn't exist anymore. I don't think
Nope.
there's any of those before, but those used to be big in my childhood, and I feel really, really old now. But he sees all the newspapers and magazines have similar messages of honor apathy, doubt humanity, surrender, over and
Mm-hmm.
over, obey over and over again. So he picks up a magazine and flips through it, and it's the same type of messages, but when he takes off the glasses, it's a normal ass magazine. Then we get this businessman walks up to him, and his head is, how would you describe how these creatures look?
It's awesome. If you've ever played Fallout 4, I'm not sure if anyone in
I
the audience has
haven't.
played that. They basically look like uh someone who suffered from radiation poisoning, or kind of look like
Mm.
when you see like someone's muscles, like you see like yeah, like basically someone's musculature, and like they don't have the
Yeah.
skin. That's what they look, the aliens, or I keep calling them they, but that's what they look like to me. It's like, yeah, someone without any flesh basically on their face, and
And
really
for the
bugged out eyes.
Yeah, and for the Patreon, that would be Les's background,
Yep,
the
right
the
there.
people back there, which is very creepy. And
Yeah.
Carpenter wanted them to look humanoid, but
Hmm.
like very, very, very like disfigured humans and monsters. And so he didn't want them to look super high-techy alien types. He wanted them to look humanoid. So that's what they're. So this businessman looks like. So um, Nada looks at him and it's just like his skin is stretched tightly over his skull and his like teeth are exposed. And the guy's like, "What's your problem?" And Nada takes off the glasses and he looks like a regular guy. And the guy walks away and he looks back at Nada and Nada checks again as the man gets in the car. He just cannot believe it. Then the owner approaches him and tells him that basically it's not a library. And I don't know if you caught this. It was kind of quick. I didn't catch it the first time I watched, but he said he looks down at the guy, at the owner who has money in his hands, and it says, "This is your God," printed
Hmm.
on it.
I saw
Which,
that. Yep,
yeah,
that was great.
yeah. So Nada walks away, and now he hears a message coming from the traffic signals that says like "sleep" over and over and over and over again.
Mm.
And you ever just be going through your day, just having a regular ass day, and you get home and you're just fucking exhausted,
Oh yeah.
and you wonder, I wonder.
Is that from
I'm
the
starting,
traffic signals? Maybe
yeah.
that explains
But
it.
there was a little cameo by John Carpenter. That was his voice saying,
Oh, okay,
"Sleep,
nice.
sleep." Yeah. So Nada walks away. No, I'm sorry. So he looks inside a beauty salon and he sees some of the women looking normal and some of
Mhm.
them looking like the creatures. At this point, we don't know, but they're aliens, right?
Yeah.
But so he then sees rich women loading purchases into their car, looking like the aliens. He goes inside a store, same thing. It's just kind of rinse and repeat over and over. Like he's getting accustomed to the fact that he's not crazy. These glasses are allowing him to see something. So then he sees inside men and women just doing normal things, but they're alien looking motherfuckers. He then notices on TV there's a politician speaking, and it's one of them as well. And he
Mhm.
just laughs and he says, "Figured it'd be something like this." Yeah. So, like I said, I'm not a very smart man. So I don't know what they're trying to say by the glasses, right? So you put the glasses on and you're able to see capitalism for what it really is. You take them off and you're blinded by capitalism, right? What do
Mhm.
the glasses represent? Is it knowledge, perhaps? Is it socialism? Like, what do you think like, have you thought about that? And what do you think the
I
glasses?
haven't thought about it harder, but that's a good question to pose. Like, yeah, is it just something as literal as being able to see past the bullshit? Because it's interesting, like when he looks, obviously everything's in black and white, and so like a lot of those
That's
images
right.
from like
Yeah.
the adverts and everything, like everything, like you don't have all the shiny bright stuff or the pictures of people like in the magazine adverts. Like it's just the black and white. It tells you like, no, this is bullshit, or it's like it's telling you what the message is, so it could be, yeah, something as simple as like you you just see past the BS like once you have the glasses on. But I do like some of the things that you pose, that it could be like, yeah, socialism, or I can't remember the first one that you brought up.
Just knowledge, like the
Mhm.
learning about like how capitalism destroys
Right.
the planet and everybody around
Hmm.
us. Um, so yeah, that was one of the questions I was thinking, like, and I'm sure it's been, the thing is, this is can be looked at as just a silly sci-fi horror movie, right? On the surface, silly sci-fi horror movie. If that's how you want to take it, it could be seen that way. But it's also a lot deeper than that, which I absolutely love about
Hmm.
this movie. So then an old woman bumps into him and he says, "You look like your head fell into the cheese back in 1957 or something like that."
Oh, so specific.
Yeah. And I was like, sick burn, I guess. I don't know. It was
Yeah,
like very specific, but I
very
don't think it was
specific.
hitting as much as you thought it was. But
No.
um, and then he looks at another woman who is not an alien. He's like, "You're okay. This
Hmm.
one's really fucking ugly."
Yeah.
Calls her formaldehyde face.
Hmm.
I was enjoying this part. He was kind of, this
That
is
was
when he was
awesome.
able to have fun. I think at this point
He was.
he doesn't realize how much in danger he is,
No,
right? Because
he's
he's
being
just
very
like
casual about it.
being
Yep.
very casual about it. But he falls, and the old woman starts speaking into her Dick Tracy transmitter watch
Hmm.
and says, like, "I've got one that can see." And then they all
I'll
start
start
doing,
ganging up on him. Yep.
yeah. And they kind of start advancing on him, which was scary. It
Yeah,
could
it
be very
was.
scary. They're kind of describing him, what he looks like, and he
Hmm.
hightails it out of there. He goes outside and he sees more of them. He sees one of the aliens fixing her hair. He's like, he had a great line here. He says, "That's like pouring perfume on a pig." And suddenly he's tackled by some cops,
Yep.
and the cops are the aliens as well. And the cop is asking him, "Where'd you get those glasses?" And he says, "The Tooth Fairy." So the other officer shows up. He's one of them as well. And he asks him, he asks something about, he's talking about how they look. And he says, did you nick yourself shaving? Because you can see down like the ligaments and the musculature in their
Yeah.
face. And the cop says, you look as shitty to us as we do to you, which is fair.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fair,
That's
you know?
fair. Yep.
But Nada says, that's impossible. I was like, okay. I like the fact that, knowing that Roddy Piper was known for shit talking in his wrestling career, he
Hmm.
got to do a lot of that shit talking now.
Yeah.
There is a point in the movie where he just reverts to one-liners. And at
Yeah.
that point, I'm like,
But
it's a
a
bit
little
much.
much. Yeah, I could tone it
Yeah,
down a tiny bit. Yeah.
yeah. So they're basically trying to say, it's easier if we don't have to splatter your brains. Let's take it easy. Let's go somewhere quiet. But Nada just ends up attacking them, kicking their asses, and takes their guns and basically shoots them both.
Yeah. Smoke the cops like pretty much in broad daylight. I was like, damn, okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Go not.
I love it.
Yeah.
So then he grabs the shotgun from the car.
Hmm.
At that point, another cruiser pulls up. So he has to hide in the nearest building, which unfortunately happens to be a
Bang.
bank. Yeah. So he's got the glasses on and the guns, and everyone obviously gasps, thinking it's a robbery.
Hmm.
And there's some creatures in there, some aliens, and then the infamous line here. Do you remember the line?
Yeah, go back a bullet. I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. And so it's funny, he said this line. I've heard this line for years. I did not know it came from Roddy himself. Him improvising. I Googled it after the fact, and I was like, he came up with this line. That
Yeah,
was a good one. That was a good, yeah, just random line from him. That was just amazing. I loved it. Like, wow, like to hear the origin of it. That was awesome. I love
I
that.
love it. I love hearing that as well. Do you know the full story of the line?
No, please
Okay.
regale me.
Yeah, so because he was a shit talker throughout his career, and the wrestlers would have interviews with Mean Gene and all that sort of stuff, and so
Hmm.
they'd have these one-liners and stuff like Macho Man Randy Savage was great at that as well, and so he had a notebook full of one-liners that he would
Oh.
say, and so him and Carpenter were talking one day, and he's like, "Well, I got this notebook full of one-liners," so he gave it to Carpenter. Carpenter read through it and said, "This one's great for the situation," so that's how they used it. So
Mm,
he improvised. It was his line,
yeah.
but yeah, it's amazing. It's one of the, and I get what you're saying about. I love the fact that you've heard the line so many times and you didn't
Yeah,
realize it
I
was
did
from
not
this
know.
movie. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah. So so then there's a security guard in the bank. He opens fire and Nada returns fire. Another creature calls it in, and Nada's like, "Mama don't like tattletales." Okay.
Yeah.
But at that point, the creature, the alien disappears. So that's going to
Hmm.
come back
Yep.
later on as well. So Nada leaves and he encounters a drone.
Hmm. Yeah, drone.
I don't know if he knew, if Carpenter knew what a drone would be. Maybe it was already, it seems like technology people just look at sci-fi books from for the worst things that could possibly happen and they're like, okay, let's do that.
Hmm.
Drones being one of them. And so it's literally a drone,
Hmm.
and it's watching him, and he ends up shooting it out of the air. Um, it's just kind of scary, because I don't think drones were even thought about, 1988, but I know it's something that came through the military industrial complex. So then there's another cop who isn't a creature, like, who's an alien. He lets that one live. So later, we see a woman who we find out is Holly walking to her car, walking to her car, and there's cars all in the background. And Nada suddenly grabs her and throws her into her car and tells her to drive. So he's basically using her to get away from the neighborhood, whatever. So she leaves the garage, and the riot police have shown up, and they pass them. And he's like, just keep driving. And he asks her, are you married? And she says, yes. And he's like, please don't lie. Which he probably saw that she wasn't wearing a ring or something like that. But
Hmm.
I don't wear a ring and I'm married. I got fat fingers. But what was actually funny was that Roddy Piper, the man,
Mhm.
refused to take off his ring for the movie.
Oh, is
Because
this interesting? Because I noticed his wedding band at one point. I was like, is he married or is there a backstory to that? Like, because yeah, he
yeah,
doesn't mention his background. I'm like, oh, other than being from Colorado, like
yeah,
Krampus.
and he just wanted he was in love with his wife and he didn't want to remove his ring, which
Wow.
is very cute,
Oh,
very nice to hear.
yeah.
And so he didn't remove it, which I thought was funny. And then anyway, so he asks if she's married. She says yes. She says please don't lie, and she's like no. So he asks if he live alone, and then he's like, let's go to your place. And at this point, I feel so bad for her. She must be terrified, like
Mhm.
a single woman alone being driven, like being kidnapped and driven to her house. Like
Yeah.
what she must be going through was absolutely terrifying. Later on, I'm like, oh man, I wish I hadn't felt bad for her, but at
Yeah.
this point,
At this point, right?
yeah,
This crazy gunman hops in her car and it's like, yeah, like you don't know what the fuck is going on. Like, yeah, you feel awful for her.
yeah. So they arrive at her house, and he kind of leads her in by the arm, and some neighbors see them enter. I
Hmm.
thought this was going to come back
Hmm.
some way. I thought the neighbors were going to be aliens, and we're going to like tell on them or something like that. It doesn't happen.
No,
Um, so I wasn't quite sure what the purpose of that was for, but
I don't know. It was cool seeing her gay neighbors. That was nice. It's like,
yeah, that
hey,
was cool.
yeah, it was just like they didn't make a thing out of it. It was like they're just her neighbors, and they just moved on into the house. I
Yeah,
thought like maybe they were gonna snitch on him, like they were gonna notice that he had like a weapon or something, but no, they're just like, hey, Holly, and then it's not a thing of that.
yeah, pretty progressive for 1988.
So,
So then he takes the glasses off, and he's like, "Whew, it's like a drug. It's basically like a huge high, and then you crash."
mhm.
Um, he apologizes for taking her, and she says, "You're not sorry. You're in charge." And he's like, "Look, lady, we're in trouble. They're all around us. We just never knew it. You can only see them with these special glasses." And she's like, "Sure, I'll do whatever you want, whatever you want. Just don't hurt me." And it's like he must sound like a madman. He
Yeah,
must,
like imagine someone came up to you saying stuff like that, like, what have you been smoking, dude?
yeah, exactly. So she says, "You're fighting the forces of evil that none of us can see without the glasses." He's like, "Take a look." And she's like, "I'll look, but if I don't see anything, I'm gonna say that I did anyway." Which was like he's trying to force her to look, and then we see later on with the amazing fight scene that he was trying to force.
Mhm.
So he's just trying to force people to see it his way,
Yeah,
which is probably isn't the best way to go
not
about
the
it.
best way. I will say, I like this scene too because I feel like I don't want to say he's blasé before, but I feel like you really see the urgency like here, like maybe he's starting to really feel like the impact of all this. So like he's feeling like really urgent and insistent, like when he's trying to tell her about like this takeover, like paranoid or whatever. But like it's like wow, like yeah, he's really giving them an emotional little performance here.
Yeah, I think his acting was pretty good. I mean, like,
Yeah, I'm not saying it wasn't good, but I feel like like in the bank scene, like again, just like a lot more or casual, like just
yeah,
like I said, uh, just shooting aliens. It's like it's no big deal. Like it just feels like so maybe a little more low key, like a little more blasé, a little bit. I mean, at least in
yeah.
terms of my read, but like
No, I
I
agree
really
with
like the
you.
scene here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he was allowed to flex his artistic chops here.
Yeah,
Which was great. And I think it was such a shame that like later on they reverted to just one-liners for him,
yeah,
you know.
it got a little heavy on that a little bit towards the
But
end.
but at the same time, it is an action film, and you kind
Yeah.
of what do you expect to it. But
Hmm.
I was just in general, I think Roddy Piper's acting was pretty decent in here, and
Yeah.
he was like one of the first, if not the first wrestler besides El Santo in Mexico, because he
Hmm.
was El Santo was luchador from Mexico who in lucha libre who was making movies since the 60s or
Hmm.
even late 50s, but um in the States, Roddy Piper was kind of like the first wrestler to make the transition to films. And in fact, um what's it McMahon, what's the from WWF? Vince McMahon.
Mhm.
Vince McMahon didn't want Roddy Piper to do the film. He's like, if you want to do movies, I'll get you a movie, but don't do this one. But Roddy Piper said, no, I'm going to do it. And he actually had to leave. He quit
Oh,
the
damn.
WWF in order to make this movie.
Mhm.
And he was like, yeah, Vince McMahon is just he wants to control everything. He's so controlling, but
Mhm.
which is I've heard, you hear all the time from him.
Right.
He's kind of a terrible person,
Mhm.
but he's like, I left and I made this movie, and when I came back, I was being paid three times the amount. So
Nice.
I love that. I
Worked
love
out
that
for
he's
him in the end. I love that. Yeah.
yeah. So back to the movie. Nada has to rest his eyes, and while he does, she tries to get up, but he's like, "Don't fuck with me." And she's like, "Oh, I'm thirsty." So he's like, "Go ahead." And she's talking. She says that she's an assistant program director at a TV station. And when he hears this, he leaps up and says, "They're sending some sort of signal from the TV set." And he walks over to her TV set, and she immediately does a roundhouse punch with the bottle, hits him in the head, and then throws him through her floor to ceiling window,
Yeah.
smashing it to pieces, and he falls down, hitting the hills below and just like rolling.
That was incredible.
He's
Love
dead,
this.
realistically, right? Realistically, he's dead.
Yeah.
The force at which she hits the back of his head with a liquor bottle, if he is not like comatose or like literally like brain damage for the rest of his life, he's probably dead realistically. But it's a movie and I understand.
Yeah, she did think she killed him, to be fair. But yeah,
Exactly.
it was nuts. Like I love this, and I remember I was like, good for Holly. I mean, later, boo Holly, but I was like, good for Holly when she
Yeah.
launches ass out the window with this move. I was like, damn, that was a dope move. That was great.
Yeah. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Like for her, I loved it at all.
Mhm.
Um, it was so surprising. How were you?
Yeah, I
There's a
was like,
couple
whoa,
surprises in this movie.
that
Yeah,
was a
exactly.
great surprise. That one and the preacher surprise, like in the church, like
Yeah.
I love that. Those are two really
And
great
there's one
surprises.
later on at the very
Mhm.
end that's
Yep,
amazing as well.
there's some great surprises in this movie.
Yeah. So he's outside, like recovering. She
Mhm.
makes a call very calmly. She's like,
Very
"No,
calm.
no, I'm all right." And at this point, I was thinking, the cop is she calling the cop? Who's she talking to?
Yeah.
But then she does look down at the glasses. So I was like, okay, is she gonna have some second thoughts, or the cop's gonna show up and she uses the glasses? Like, I was wondering what was happening here. I think
Mhm.
he did a good job of making us suspicious of her, but also giving her a way to come back later on.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
it was kind of really well handled.
Mhm.
So he stumbles back up after taking that L, and he's kind of like under the house. It's one of those Hollywood houses you only see in Hollywood, that it's on the hill and the
Stuff
beams are
falling up.
holding it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's dazed, but he hears the cops approaching, so he tries to get away. He he makes it to an alleyway, and then cold and beaten, he passes out. In the morning, we see him walking back to the city. He goes to the construction site. He's looking for Frank, and Frank sees him. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" He's like, "Don't let anybody see you." He's like, "How many people did you kill?" And then he says, "Not people." And then he says, "You." Frank says, "You crazy son of a bitch." Nada says, "I got to show you something." He says, "No, you're not showing me anything." And he's like, "Get out of here." And I'm thinking automatic. I love their dynamic.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
so good.
it's
What
great.
did you think?
I was like, one, like, I can't believe that, yeah, Nana bothered to show up at the site. And two, like, I love that Frank's like, nope, nope, I'm staying away from this crazy motherfucker. So I was a
Yeah.
little bummed actually when they it's very close on after the scene that they do have another camera. It's like, okay, like he's washed his hands of this guy, like he's not gonna get tangled into this bullshit. And
Yeah.
no, you can't avoid it that easily.
Yeah. So then Nada goes back to the alleyway where he left the box of sunglasses, but he sees that they've been thrown out in the garbage truck. Luckily, the garbage truck is right there, which is like the first of a series of really fortunate
Mhm.
coincidences
Very
for him.
fortunate.
Yeah. And then he manages to open the truck and climbs in, and he's rummaging through the garbage. But then the garbage men are arguing, and then they dump the garbage out. on the alleyway anyway, which is kind of funny. He's kind of doing a little bit of like um Big Trouble in Little China,
Mm,
the kind of bumbling hero that we got going
yeah.
on here, which I always like that.
Hmm.
He finds the box of glasses, and then he's kind of walking away, and there's Frank. And Frank says 1 week's pay, and he tosses it into the box, which is a nice toss.
Good song.
Then Nada checks with the glasses to see if Frank is cool, and he is. And he says, "Wait." He's like, then Frank said, or I'm sorry, yeah, Frank says, "You better find yourself somewhere to hide." And Nada tells him to try these glasses on and put these on. And then he starts to walk away. And he's like, "I'm trying to save you and your family's life." Then comes the best fight in cinematic history. So you said you knew about the fight.
Hmm.
Had you seen this fight, this clip before, or did you just
I don't
know?
think I watched the whole thing. I have seen a little bit of the clip, but I've never watched the whole fight. And that's a long ass fight. That's a great this fight is
Yeah.
yes, this fight is unbelievable. I was just like, I literally write the fight and like eight exclamation marks and it just popped up. Like I loved it. It's like every time I
Yeah.
thought I was like, okay, they're done. Like, nope, it keeps scrapping. They keep going. Like the endurance. I love it. Like this is great.
So he says, either put on these glasses or start eating that trash can. And Frank says, "Not this year." And then he says, "Okay, all right." And this right here needs to be seen really to give it any justice. So
Hmm.
if you haven't seen the movie and you're just listening, thank you for listening. But I would seriously recommend just Googling
Yes.
"They Live" fight
It's on
scene.
YouTube. You can
It's
find
not,
it.
it's so fucking good. But essentially, they really fight for the next 5 minutes and 20 seconds.
Hmm.
They trade blows over and over, the winner changing multiple times. It's so much fun. And we Nada's like, "I don't want to fight you," but Frank is seeming to have a good time. He's like, I
Yeah.
warned you, now I'm gonna kick your ass," which I fucking love.
Hmm.
Um, so at one point, Nada goes to kick him in the balls or punch him in the balls, and Frank is like, "You
You
dirty
dirty.
motherfucker."
Yeah. Yep.
Oh man, so good.
It is.
Uh he does like a suplex, there's biting,
Yeah.
there's eye gouging, there's bottle breaking when he busts a windshield. Even
Hmm.
when he breaks the bottle, it's hilarious because the whole bottle breaks
The
and
whole wild race, man.
Frank looks down at it angry. He's like, "Fuck." And so again, he's like, they're finally on the floor, and he's like, "Put these glasses on." Like he puts these glasses on his chest. He's like, "Fuck you." Nada gets up again. He Nada body slams Frank, finally forces the glasses on him after 5 minutes
Hmm.
and picks him up. And he's like, "Look." And we see that there's more aliens down at the end of the alley. They're noticing, the aliens are noticing Frank, and Nada noticing them.
Right.
And so they call it in. But first, before we get to that, I wanted to
Hmm.
stop and say
Yep.
the fight scene.
The fight scene.
What did you think?
One, it was just it was beautiful. Like I mean, like every time, like I said, every time I thought they were gonna be done, like yeah, just the endurance of that fight, like the physicality, like you said, there were a couple suplexes in there. I love the whole thing. Like I thought, like every time I thought, oh, Roddy's got this. Like nope, Frank gets back up and which is like it was great. Like I mean, I love the location of it. Like it's just yeah, they were getting filthy. Like you could see them getting scuffed up. I mean, towards the end, Frank like the back of his head was like bleeding. Like I loved it. Like this is it was worth it. It lived up to the hype and whatever I built up in my head. Like yeah, this is great. I had fun watching this scene.
Yeah.
The fight.
And so the fight sequence was designed, rehearsed, and choreographed in the backyard of Carpenter's production office.
Mm.
Um, and it was only supposed to last 20 seconds, but
Wow.
Piper and David decided to fight it out for real,
Mm.
only faking the hits to the face and the groin. And they
Wow.
rehearsed the fight for 3 weeks.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah. Talk about
That's why
dedication.
it's so good.
it's it's like a dance. It's like, I mean,
It
like
is.
that's what wrestling is. Like
Mhm,
it's just dancing and acrobatic moves and working with your partner. And that's what this felt like.
mhm.
It's beautiful. It's
It's
beautiful.
dope. And
So
I mean, they really, what's the word? They really, I feel like they build up to like we want Frank to see it, we want Frank to see. So like they really make us work for it, like with that 5 minute video, like it's not coming easy, like seeing the truth is not easy. So like yeah, like I guess I really like if you want to force some messaging there too. I really like that too. Like just the struggle of trying to share the truth and then get the truth as well.
oh man, yeah, it's a great yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, when you're trying to bring truth to people, they're very resistant
Mm-hmm.
to it. They just yeah, that's because the oh man, yeah, because they just like people just want to be left alone and in their own ignorance.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Me myself, I'm ignorant about a lot of things and choose to be so, but I think that's a really good message. I hadn't even thought occurred to that. That's a great comment there.
Thanks.
So then we see that so we Frank is finally seeing the aliens. He's stunned by what he sees. And he's like, what's oh no, we see another drone. He's like, what's that? And Nada says, brother, life's a bitch and she's in heat. Not as good of a line. I
Not
mean,
as great. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, okay. Like one or two one-liners was
Right.
really good. You don't need all that. But I'm sure this is 1988, like the height of
Yeah. The height of the action movie
Stallone,
one-liners and yeah.
Schwarzenegger. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah.
later they're walking down the sidewalk side by side, and I like that. Did you notice that now they are walking side by side, as whereas before Nada was walking behind him. He said that he
Mm,
wouldn't walk next to him
true.
unless he knew where that man was going, and now he knows where they're going. They're walking side by side. They're both wearing the sunglasses. They find a cheap hotel. They get a room. Nada takes his glasses off and says, "Ain't love grand?" And I was really hoping that they would just both look at each other and start cracking up and laughing. I think that would have been so good, like to connect
Yeah.
on the fact that we just beat the shit out of each other
Mhm.
for like 5, 6 minutes, and now we're like in a hotel room together, like
Right.
working together. So at this point, I was like, why is he the only one talking in one-liners? But yeah. So Frank looks outside the window and sees everything that Nada saw earlier. And Nada warns him not to wear the glasses for too long. And this was like Frank wants to know what the fuck is happening. He's like, where do they come from? What are they? What are they doing here? And again, Nada's just like, they ain't from Cleveland. And Frank has had enough of this shit. He's like, I don't need that kind of, energy. Tell me what the fuck is happening. You haven't answered any of my questions. So at this point, like Nada's like, well, if you got a plan, let me know. Because at this point, I don't have a plan. And Frank says that they gotta find the people who make them. So later at night, they're drinking beer, they're talking, and we kind of get Nada's backstory here. He says his dad used to beat him and kick him and like all this sort of stuff. He had to run away at 13 because his dad put a knife to his throat once and was going to cut it. It was like going back and forth as he was going to cut his throat. So he had to leave. Um, and then Frank says maybe they've always been here. Maybe they love seeing us hate each other. And Nada says, well, if that's true, well, there's going to be hell to pay because I ain't daddy's little boy anymore. He just devolved into one-liners. I would have liked some more, like you were saying, when he got a chance to kind of give more to the character other than
Mhm.
one-liners. He was really good.
Yeah.
So the next day, Frank went to get supplies and he walks right by Gilbert in the hotel lobby. Gilbert later confronts him and Frank and checks if, sorry, let me read what this note says. Oh, sorry. So Gilbert confronts him and Frank and checks if they're okay with the glasses, and so he is. So later, Gilbert is telling him that there's a meeting tonight. He says the world needs a wake up call, and we're gonna phone it in. later, Frank and Nada are walking down the streets and they're both armed, which I don't know. Like, I know Texas, or yeah, I think Texas is like one of those states where you can walk around armed, but I feel like this is a fairly new thing. I don't know if you could have just be walking the streets armed.
No, I can
Yeah.
remember in the scene, it was a fairly isolated street though, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
if maybe they were just worried about running into any of the people, but yeah, like they were very conspicuous, and which were like, you don't need to parade the fact that you're armed, so folks. But yeah, they definitely just had the guns out. I
Yeah.
did notice that as well.
So go up to a building that's with a guard with a shotgun. They walk in and they see 100 or so people, and one of them knows Frank, so they say hi. And then she tells him that he could take off their glasses since they're all humans there, and then she hands them contact lenses. So it's an upgrade to the glasses, which I thought was really cool as well.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of feels like Q from like the James Bond movies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here's your contacts.
yeah. So then they meet up with Gilbert again, and Gilbert says the cops are looking for them. And the cops, the human cops, have been told that they're commies, and that's why they're looking for them, not necessarily because they know about the aliens. And this is basically class warfare, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times people, the classes should be, the lower class should be fighting against the upper class, and that's it, right? It shouldn't be racial boundaries. It shouldn't be age or sexual preference or anything like that. But the aliens have brainwashed, and not in a literal brainwashing, but like have brainwashed these cops to think that these people that are fighting for the resistance are commies, and so that's why they're fighting and willing to kill them and all that sort of stuff. So very poignant to this day. So most have joined. He says that most cops have joined with the creatures. Probably sounds accurate. And so basically, we TV in the background, we hear them saying that the aliens are trying to turn our atmosphere, meaning the Earth's atmosphere, into their own atmosphere. So they're terraforming for us. So that's why like pollution is out of
Pollution.
control. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
is that what you were getting from this?
Yep. Oh yeah. It's like basically unchecked capitalism totally creates their perfect environment. So like yeah, all the pollution and smog and yeah, like illegal dumping and all that stuff. Like basically they can wreck our world and and they'll be in paradise and we'll be suffering. But hey, yay capitalism, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's basically global warming, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and global warming.
Yeah. So he says that the Earth to them is just another developing planet, their
Mhm.
third world,
They're third
which is
world.
great
I
to
like
hear
that.
because, yeah,
Yep.
like we are, as Americans and people in the West, we're always talking about like the third world, the third world. It's like, fuck you, it's not, it's a developing nation. And the reason why it's developing is because their resources are being taken from them, you know, like it's ridiculous how, how deep this movie actually is, you
Hmm.
know. So he says that they're going to deplete this planet and then move on to the next one. So Gilbert says that they need an assault unit to hit them hard and shows Frank and Nada basically their arsenal. They also give them watches, or at least one watch, so they can listen in on the aliens' conversations, but they haven't quite figured out how to do the disappearing act. So later, Gilbert is talking to the people. Some want to fight back, but Gilbert says that they don't stand a chance. They don't have, the manpower to do that. Kind of like what you were saying earlier. They're a small band right now.
Hmm.
They have to wait to strike for the right time. He says we have to find their signal and shut it off and wake people up. So I guess I wasn't understanding earlier that if you shut off the signal, what happens is there's a signal blocking everybody from being able to see
Right.
that they're aliens, and the glasses are allowing you to see that. So if you shut down that signal, you'll be able to see these aliens. So I think that's what Gilbert, like why they wouldn't just throw a bunch of glasses out, right? It's because they want to go big picture for this.
Right.
Um, and then they're like, So we need to shut off the signal. Then he's like, yeah, just randomly, Dave works at KRLA or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, yeah, the signal must be coming from there. And Holly suddenly, a voice in the back says, oh, it's not coming from there. We've checked it or something like that. And it's Holly. She
Hmm.
says the signal is clear, just must be coming from somewhere else. So we get the return of Holly,
Molly's back.
and Nada is very happy to see that. So Nada goes to talk to her, and she asks if he's okay. She says, I thought I'd killed you.
Hmm.
And he says, I thought so too. And she says, I didn't know. I'm sorry. Can we just talk? And then, do you want to say what happens here? You
Yeah,
remember?
there's a freaking explosion that I didn't see coming at all. That was great. Again, another amazing surprise. Like, yeah, like hops bust in and there's a giant explosion and they do what they do best, which is murdering people.
Kill indiscriminately.
Yep.
Yeah. I was like, Jesus, I was not expecting that at all. I was like,
No, I was,
whoa.
yeah, totally blown away by that. And
Yeah.
before we get into all the chaos of that, or no, I guess I can talk about it later because this is something that I think matters even more later. But yeah, we can get to later. But
Okay.
you can kind of do the line
Yeah.
behind.
And if I'm just like talking, just feel free to interrupt me. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the police. They are just killing indiscriminately. Gilbert goes down, other people go down, they're just slaughtered. Um, Outside, Holly kind of stands in the middle of the street as this war is breaking out, and I'm like, move. But this kind of leads to be like, maybe she felt safe, right? Because she wasn't really scared about what was
Mhm.
happening. But Frank and Nada have kind of shot their way out of the building, and they're kind of stuck at the end of an alley. Nada wants to go back for Holly, but Frank stops him and he's like, you're going to get killed. So he's trying to listen in on the watch, but the cops have arrived. Frank drops the watch and it falls to the floor. And then suddenly a portal opens up on the ground where it fell. And a message says, attention, your wristwatch has malfunctioned. This entryway is temporary and will disappear in 10 seconds. So Nada tells him to jump in, but Frank hesitates. Again, I love their chemistry.
Yeah.
And but eventually he jumps in and then Nada follows and they're transported to like this long ass tunnel. And they say perhaps they're under the city or in an underground base. So I wanted to stop here and
Mhm.
ask what you thought of this. I know they kind of teased it a little bit earlier, but how did you feel about this?
About when they're in the underground space.
Or just like being transported. It's like they're about to die, and then it kind of feels like. So I guess what I'm saying is, to me, it felt like Carpenter wrote himself into a corner,
Mm.
and then Deus Ex Machina his way out of it because he like literally transports them to safety. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just
I'm totally fine with it.
you're
I,
fine with it.
I
Okay.
I didn't have any major gripe with it. I mean, yeah, it was convenient, but I mean, I was like, okay, they got to watch the work. They disappeared. What did you have some gripes against it or
Well, I think that was just it just felt too convenient to me. That's
yeah,
all. But
that's
but
fair.
but at the same time, they have been talking about we did see the person transport away the one alien, and then the revolutionary guy was saying how um they're still working on how that works, and he has the watch and it malf so yeah, I
You
just
think
think
if
it,
maybe if like they had done something active, like they had pressed the button, like maybe it would have felt better or
yeah, I think so. I don't know. I just
yeah,
yeah. It felt yeah, it was a
a
passive
little
way to
passive.
get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so then they're in this tunnel. They overhear, by the way, have I gotten to the part that you wanted to talk about yet?
It's basically when Holly reappears.
Okay, cool. So they overhear two alien soldiers saying basically the assault was a success,
Mhm.
and then they basically leave their post. The security here at this underground tunnel
Pretty
is
lax.
very lax. Yeah, that's what I'm
But they're
saying.
like, hey, we killed everyone. So I mean, there's no reason to
Yeah.
be. standing by the post, I guess.
Very, very convenient.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, another bit of convenience there.
and then Nada and Frank just happen to stumble on this black tie soiree,
Hmm.
and the speaker says that by their projections, by 2025,
Oh
2025,
man, when I
yeah,
heard that, I was like, "Good God,
yeah,
Carpenter!"
the whole world
Too-
will be under the protection and the dominion of this power alliance.
Yeah, still is. So yeah, just checking out.
Gutted, like I was like, oh, it's just
Yeah,
pit in
I
my
was feeling
stomach, you
really
know.
gutted right there
Yeah.
as well.
So he goes on to say that the gains have been substantial for us and for you, the human
Hmm.
power elites. So when
Yeah.
he said that, we realized that it's not just aliens in the audience; it's also the
Mm-mm.
humans that have
Humans
sold us
sold
out.
out. Yes,
Yeah,
sold out humanity for more per capita income.
yeah,
Woohoo!
yeah. So he says everyone that's there, their income has grown by 39% in all, just in 1 year, which
Mm-hmm.
is pretty good. It's
Yeah,
it's pretty
but is
good.
that enough to
Yeah,
sell out
yeah, I know.
humanity?
Exactly, exactly.
Nothing should be worth
So
that amount. I hope.
they all clap, and he even says that they've just received word that the terrorist organization has been wiped clean. They're then approached by a man who was in the embankment or the encampment with them. The one
Was
who
he?
said, yeah, the thing earlier when they were watching the TV and he says, "Shove it up your ass" or something like that.
Oh,
Whatever comment was that
I
was.
totally misplaced him. I thought he was the foreman for some reason.
Oh, was he the foreman?
I could be wrong because I thought he was a foreman. I
Okay.
might need to look at the credits.
Yeah, regardless, it was one of the men that they knew, right?
Okay.
Let me see now. Now I'm curious. No, because the foreman didn't have a beard,
Okay. Okay.
and this guy had a
Gotcha.
beard, so it was the
Okay.
guy from the unhoused
Okay. Well,
encampment. Yeah.
I see.
So yeah, so they're approached by him, and he's like, "Oh, you guys are with the team now, basically, huh?
Mm,
Let me go ahead and give you a tour and take you to the like the most walled, the most secure places
yeah.
in this underground secret tunnel." So this is, I guess, it was just one convenient thing happening after another
Hmm.
that I was like, that, how they got there kind of bothered me, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. I could see that.
So, and then here's again where I'm kind of confused. So he's walking them around. He shows them this portal room, and it's kind of like an airport where people are lining up to be sent back, I guess, to their home world or whatever.
Hmm.
But there's a huge window, and
Yeah.
outside the window is space.
Right.
So as we see
Hmm.
later, there's somewhere where they
Under.
go to Earth part. So are they in space or are they? I was confused by that. I was wondering what you thought.
I didn't think about George, but now that you say
Okay.
that, yeah, it doesn't quite make sense, or it's a little confusing how they did it. Yeah, but I don't quite get how that lines up if they're supposed to be underground and
Yeah.
everything.
I mean, we're talking about an alien movie. I'll let it go. I'm
Yeah.
just curious. Okay. But yeah, so they're able to walk around freely. They're then taken to the brains of the whole operation. He's telling them that the master signal is pumped from here to the whole world. And I'm like, I know we're running out of time, but
Yeah.
seriously, I mean,
Here's all the convenient bits.
yeah, this is like either the pacing was off, or I guess he wanted to do this really quick ending that we're gonna get.
Hmm.
But yeah, for me at this point, I was just the pacing seemed a bit off.
Yeah, a
But
little sped up here.
yeah. So so they ask some of the soldiers if they can get inside of the studio. They're like, be serious. And they ask for their authorization cards. And as soon as they do that, they're like, yeah, right here. And then they shoot them dead. Frank and Nada shoot the soldiers dead. At this point, the jig is up. The guy who's been leading them around knows that they're not with them. He's like, listen, it's business. It's just business. It's not personal. There are no countries anymore. They run everything. He's like, let's make some money.
Yep.
I know you want it. Everyone does. And Frank or Nada asks, you do it to your own kind? And he says, might as well be on the winning team. There's a Judas among us all the time, you know.
Yep, it sure is.
So a soldier interrupts them, but Nada and Frank shoot him, and then that dude uses his watch to disappear. So this is kind of like I said, this is sped up. This is like there's like 3 or 4 minutes left in the movie now. They throw a grenade in the booth, which interrupts the show. Then they're kind of like shooting everybody. They're shooting their way into the studio. They have to apparently make it to the roof, but they're also looking for Holly. This was kind of just it didn't really make
Were
too
they
much sense for
looking
me.
for Holly still, or did she happen to be there?
He said that we need to find Holly, but there was a pregnant lady, and then he
Hmm.
pulls her aside and he's like, "Do you know where
Oh, you're
Holly
right.
is?"
You're right. Yeah. I think he was
That,
hoping that she was gonna. Oh, that's right. He was hoping she was gonna show up back there. That's right.
yeah. So, but they're shooting anybody you see, and I guess they're letting humans live, maybe.
Yeah, they're letting the
Uh,
humans live still,
yeah,
even though the humans are sellouts. But yeah, they're
yeah,
letting them live.
exactly. Well, either they're sellouts or they just happen to be at the
Oh,
building
true. Maybe not all of them though. Maybe.
because we were underground tunnel, possibly in space, but now we're at the studio, the TV
Yeah.
studio, which
Hmm.
is in this big city. So
True.
whatever,
Yeah.
I'll let it go. But the soldiers are kind of waiting for them on the floor above and below them, but they find Holly. She just shows up here. And is there something here you wanted to mention?
A little bit later. No,
Okay.
we'll get some.
So my question right here, I was asking again, were they in
Yeah.
space or not? But so they make it to the roof, and there's this huge antenna. Um, Before he shoots, so he went ahead before Frank and Holly,
Hmm.
and then before he shoots, he kind of makes sure that Frank and Holly are clear. Then all of a sudden, from behind, we hear Holly say, "I'm clear. Are you?" And he looks behind him, and Holly is pointing the gun at him.
So my question, now that we know that Holly's a traitor,
Mhm.
oh, I mean, I guess I could have asked it before, but how did she even find the hideout to begin with if she was a traitor?
I think, yeah, I don't know, but you know how in any social revolution,
Hmm.
the powers that be plant people, right?
Right.
And they did it with any social justice thing they did with the Black Panthers. They did it with like all the people. So I think perhaps maybe she was planted there,
Hmm.
but also so that maybe they knew already that about this thing because what I've heard is that or sorry, what I've heard, I don't have insight in any of this shit. I don't know anybody. What I thought was that if you know that a place is a congregating spot for people, right?
Hmm.
You're not gonna swarm it or break it up when there's 2 people in there or 10 people in there or whatever. You're
Hmm.
gonna wait until there's the maximum amount of people that are in there so that you can do the most damage.
Right.
I think perhaps that's what was happening here, and she happened to be like their person telling them, okay, it's happening now. There's a bunch of people here. You can start. That's what I sort of thought. But again, it did seem very convenient.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was a dirty freaking rat.
Dirty freaking rat.
She was not an alien.
No,
She's a
she's a
human.
sellout. She's a
She's a
sellout
sellout
human. Yeah. So
who's
she kills Frank before so yeah, Nada doesn't know. She kills Frank as they're ascending the steps and evading the soldiers. And then yeah, like you said, she pulls a gun on Nada, and as she acts when he acts if he's clear, then we get our next bit of action.
yeah. Can I ask you a question? And I might have
Mhm.
missed it because yeah, I take
Yeah.
notes and stuff like that because I take notes.
Hmm.
Um, did we see Frank getting shot?
No, it was off screen, but I if I remember right, we heard a bang, right? We did not see him get shot, but I think we heard the gunshot.
Okay, I didn't recall hearing gunshot or
Or if
any
not,
sort.
I know we saw her pull it to his head. What I believe, I can't believe I'm already forgetting, but
I'll have
it
to,
was either
yeah.
very strongly implied, like I can't remember if she actually pulled the gun and we saw it, or we just heard the gunshot. But I remember something to that effect.
The reason why I'm asking is because I want so much for Frank to be alive,
Of course,
you know.
of course.
Um,
But I'm like, if she's alive, Frank has to be.
yeah, at the very least, he's been injured.
Yeah,
But I mean, you can see he takes a beating and keeps
he takes the
running.
beating very well, so
Yeah, so
there's a chance.
I'm hoping there's a chance that in They Live too,
Mhm.
he's the main antagonist or something like that. But
Right.
so then he pulls a gun from his sleeve quickly and shoots Holly, and then says, "Fuck it," and he shoots the signal, the huge like satellite twice,
Mhm.
which blows it up. And then there's cops and helicopters hovering him, and they shoot him multiple times, and he falls to the ground. And before he dies, you remember what he does? Did you notice this? Because I didn't notice it right away. Yeah. He gives them the
He
middle
gets,
finger.
yeah, I love that. It's like, hell
Yeah.
yeah. Give the finger
So
to the aliens.
R.I.
I
R.I.P.
want something,
Nada and
see
R.I.P. Frank.
if
So
there's something you can clarify for me. Okay, was it him that single-handedly took down the signal, or was it also the LAPD trying to get him down, or was it a combo of the two? I wasn't sure.
oh, I like that. I like the fact that there's some friendly fire in there. It could be, right? Because he does have just a small
They,
pistol.
mhm.
I was thinking the same thing, and he shoots it twice. It feels kind of like the Death Star, when there's that one way to
Uh-huh.
kill it or
Right.
blow it up. Like he must have known exactly where to shoot this thing,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of metal, it could have just ricocheted off. But so
Right.
yeah, I like the fact that because the LAPD or I don't know if it's an oh yeah, they say something LA, but
Yeah.
regardless, the police shoot him so many times that they probably help in shooting up the
Their
signal.
own demise. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Mhm.
So, which is true. I mean, they are leading to their own demise because once the aliens are done with the world, they're going to be done with the humans that help them as well.
Yep.
So next, the signal shuts off so everyone can see how the aliens really look. So
Mhm.
these newscasters on TV, like you could see that they're aliens. People in the studio, one of the guys is like, Gloria, you look like shit. I'm out of here, which I thought was, I was dying.
That was
I
great.
was dying.
That was a good one liner
Yeah.
right there.
And then we see it. So it's like quick flashes of programs on TV.
Mhm.
The next one is of two dudes that look like Siskel and Ebert,
Yeah.
that were actually aliens. And the one of I think it was Siskel that's basically mentioning John Carpenter and George Romero,
Oh
which was
yeah,
really
yeah,
cool.
I know.
Yeah, which I loved. And then next, it wouldn't be an 80s horror sci-fi movie if there wasn't breasts,
Of
right?
course. Yep.
So then there's a lady having sex. And she looks down and sees that the human that she thought she was having sex with, is actually an alien.
Yeah.
And he says, "Hey, what's wrong, baby?" And then the movie just ends.
And yeah.
And I felt like, man, they just ran out of time and money,
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, it's still a cool ending. So that's the end of They Live from 1988. So we're gonna rate it in a little bit here, but I just wanted to get your feeling first on the ending. What did you think of the ending?
So as a whole, I'm gonna kind of group it together in like the last, like you said, like yeah, 2-ish minutes versus like that final kind of, I don't want to call it joke ending, but that final ending with, like I said, with a breast. So I think I like the ending. Like, it's kind of ends like on a happy note, a high note with not being able to take out the aliens. I wasn't sure if they're going to get it done, but they did. So I like that ending, other than the fact that Frank is probably not with this RIP.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For me, it just felt a little bit rushed, but I still
Yeah,
liked it.
it's rushed.
Yeah. But so then let's go into ratings.
Yeah.
So as you know, we rate out of five upside down crosses. So what would you give They Live from 1988?
Ooh, they live. Okay. I think my gut rating is gonna be 4 upside down crosses. I think like, damn, like it still hits. It's still very relevant. I wish it wasn't so freaking relevant, but it really is. Like I said, a little bit rushed towards the end, and I could have done without some one-liners. There is a little bit of the direction that I think felt like a little bit casual. I wish, yeah, Roddy maybe got some more space to do a little bit, but overall, I think I can see why it's a cult classic. There's some amazing surprises, some really fun surprises. That fight scene is worth worth the admission price,
Yes.
and yeah, just the visuals of the aliens and just the messaging. I yeah, I want to give this a 4.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna agree with you there. I'm gonna do it 4 upside down crosses as well. I mean, I think Carpenter, just the commentary that he had on here, and some of it could be in the short story. I don't know. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
read it. It is only like a couple pages, so I'm gonna read it after this. But the messaging is there. It's poignant. It's unfortunately, like you're saying, still relevant to this day. I think, yeah, I love Keith David. He's the fucking man. He's so good in this. He's so charming. He's so fucking just presence. And he's like equal to Nada in this. Like they're just partners. The chemistry that him and Roddy Piper had together, just amazing. It would have been fun to see them again in something. But R.I.P. Roddy Piper.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, the creature design was great.
love it.
This is kind of like way more sci-fi than it is horror, like you were saying earlier, but still,
Yeah.
it's Carpenter, it's fun, it's based in horror, which is fine with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I really, really love this movie. That fight scene, just watch it. It's so
Yeah.
good. So yeah, 4 upside down crosses for me. So what we do now is I ask for of you a movie of a similar vein from this, maybe another 80s action film, maybe another social commentary horror film, something like that. And if you'd like, I can go first because
Yeah,
I
you go
have some.
first.
Okay, cool. So what I would say, if people haven't seen it, if we're talking about like consumerism, is The Stuff
Mm,
from the 80s as well. And that's rampant consumerism. That's literally what you buy, consuming, and destroying you and destroying the world. So that is one my recommendation for people to, and I think it would be a great double bill with They Live and The Stuff. So what's the movie that you would recommend, Bliss?
I think I'm gonna go even further back in the vault, and I'll do Soylent Green. Yeah, maybe not quite the anti-consumerism message, but I think there's some fun hitting messaging in that one. It's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, it's been a while since I saw that one, but I do remember it being pretty enjoying that one a lot. So I think that's a great double bill. So okay, so Les and I are going to continue our conversation in the Sunday school sessions, which is a Patreon exclusive after show. So if you'd like to support the show and listen to those conversations that I do with every guest, please support the show, patreon.com/my horror confessional. In the meantime, Les, thank you so much for being on again. This has been an absolute blast. It's always so much fun talking to you. If you could please let everybody know again how they could follow you and how they could support all your work.
Hell yeah. I am on Twitter at LesWrite, LESWRITE. Instagram is LES_WRITE. You can find me on my website, leswrite.com. And yeah, pretty much everywhere on the internet, I'm LESWRITE, some variation. You put that on Google and you will probably find me.
Look out for the Kickstarter coming in March.
Yep, Kickstarter coming in the March
All right,
for Savage Wizard #2.
everybody, thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Live spooky, die spooky.